Fatou is a trained environmentalist. Fatou is currently serving as one of the climate advisors to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. She used to co-lead the Women and Gender working group at the UN FCCC Youth Organization, UNGO. She has received multiple awards. She has received multiple papers, including on the role that the UK could be playing more on the climate scene. But Fatou is not only someone who works in the offices and writes papers, she has a very, very direct engagement. She founded Clean Earth Gambia. That is her son. And Fatou, through Clean Earth Gambia, has worked with and engaged with more than 3,000 youth in the Gambia on all along the chain of issues, from reforesting part of the countries to beach cleanups. I was reflecting that when I was Fatou's age, I think I was just out of an unpaid internship, and I went back to my mum's for a few weeks, so different levels of achievements. But I was also reflecting that back in 2019 in Brussels, I attended a meeting in the Council of the European Union focused on the long-term strategy on climate. During that meeting, it was on a Friday, we started hearing the crowds outside. It was actually the Fridays for the Future. And an incredible coincidence, and the meeting had to stop because of the noise, and people, representatives of member states, went to the window to see what was happening. So that was pressure live. And I don't know if they ever knew that, the youth outside, but they had, in fact, that they very direct impact. And to some extent, it's also what we want to do today with Fatou's speech, to put some pressure on the next panel. Fatou, please.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And thank you. I mean, my son has actually given me the perfect introduction to my keynote and the theme of my intervention, which is the future we choose. I am just reminding all the leaders here and all the key stakeholders here that whatever decision we make today has an impact on the lives of the young and future generation, including my one-year-old who's sitting here in this meeting today. So I just always want to remind us that we should never be selfish as far as climate issues are concerned, because we are in the era of global boiling, as the UN Secretary General will always say. Thank you so much to the European Union delegation as well as Imperial College for the invitation. I briefly listened to the previous panels, especially the one on delivering energy transition and building our resilience to climate change. And obviously we all will understand and will acknowledge the devastating impact climate change has all over the world. Of recent, we have been seeing an increase in drought. For instance, my country, the Gambia, which is a major agriculture economy, has been experiencing climate-related impacts as a result of the activities that we do on our planet. We have been seeing a rise in sea level because scientists have mentioned that my city, which is Banjul, the Gambia, will inundate on a 1 meter sea level rise. And this is across many countries, especially in the global south, experiencing the devastating impacts of climate change. And we must acknowledge that for us to transition to a just and equitable society, we need to make sure that energy justice and energy poverty is addressed. Because it's really sad to continue to see how over 600 million people across Africa actually are experiencing energy poverty without even access to basic electricity. Yet, I was in a panel discussion last month with Sandrine from the co-president of Rome, and she shared a really amazing, like a really interesting figure with me that over $2.8 billion is what oil and gas companies make as profit every single day. $2.8 billion is what oil and gas companies are actually making as profit every single day. Yet countries and governments are only committing to about like 600 million in the lost and damaged fund, when we know that we are continuing to experience how climate change is affecting our lives and our livelihoods. What can this do? What can this solve? So we really need to make sure that we, as we are transitioning to a just economy and we are addressing the impacts of climate change, we need to make sure we keep our promise for climate financing. Because at the end of the day, if we keep having panels and conversations without committing to climate financing, then we have a long way to go in addressing the climate crisis. As one of the youth climate advisors to the UN Secretary General, I've had the opportunity to actually engage and directly advise the UN Secretary General on climate-related issues. And I would say that he is someone that has been very vocal in phasing out and advocating for the phase out of fossil fuel, as well as calling for ambitious leadership in addressing the climate crisis. And he has been also someone that has been very vocal in working with young people. And as we see around the world, we see the power young people continue to have in not only calling for transparency and accountability for climate action, but we have seen how young people have taken the bold leadership to actually call for climate justice. In places like Europe, we have seen how young people are out on the street protesting and making sure that they influence behavioral changes. In other parts of the world, like Africa, we are seeing young people establishing organizations, working with their communities and their governments to advance climate action. An example is my organization, Clean Art, and also organizations that have been set by my colleagues, for instance, Sustain Fair, by Elizabeth and Charisma, among others. So around the world, we continue to see how young people have been very vocal and have been very much in the forefront in addressing climate change. However, some might say that the power or the influence young people have around the world is actually decreasing. It is not. And I just want to say that young people have been engaged in different avenues. And our engagement is not only limited to protesting, but we have been actually individuals that have been policymakers, that have been educators, that have been innovators, that have been campaigners, we have been activists, we have been doing so many different actions. And even with all the work that young people continue to do, making sure that we call for bold leadership, for bold action from our leaders, we have to understand that the main responsibility lies on our leaders, because these are the individuals that are going to make the policies that actually influence and determine our future. So in as much as young people have been very bold in calling for leadership, in political wills and climate justice, we need to make sure that we put the pressure on our leaders, because these are the key people that actually have an impact on our lives and our livelihoods. In addition to that, I just wanted to share that obviously with my organization at Clean Art Gambia, we have planted over 30,000 trees over the past years, working with key partners, and I've also done several other initiatives. But the truth is, all the trees that we are planting around the world, all the trees that millions of young people are planting around the world, will be significantly affected over a 1.5 degrees warmer planet. We are all sitting in this room, and we can attest to the fact that it is really hot in here. We go outside, we can't even walk properly because it is hot outside. Now imagine other parts of the world, in Africa, in the global south, which is actually hotter. So all these efforts that we are doing, all these actions that we are doing, has a major influence on our planet. And the IPCC and science have made it clear that for us to make sure that we address the climate crisis, we need to ensure that we cut our emissions below the 1.5 degrees Celsius. Because at the end of the day, the planet is going to get hotter. We're going to experience more drought. People are going to lose their lives and their source of income, including my father, who is a farmer, whose main source of income is dependent on agriculture, and now actually being affected as a result of the climate crisis. This is the same for other families who are actually living in coastal zones, who are at risk of being displaced. We go to countries like Kiribati, in Fiji, among others. These are places that are almost submerged as a result of what rising sea level. So we need to make sure as individuals, as leaders, we rethink the decisions that we make and the actions that we do. Because as I always say, this will have an impact on not only their generation, but most importantly, the future generation. And for me, my call to action and what I am looking for at COP29 is first of all, and most importantly, increasing climate financing, especially on climate adaptation and loss and damage. Because the countries that are affected, that are vulnerable, that are marginalized, will continue to be affected if we do not make sure we are committed and we are serious on the issue of climate financing. The second thing, obviously, is to make sure that the policies that we are making are actually inclusive, especially ensuring that the solutions that we are bringing are targeted to the local needs of people, and ensuring that we are involving and including communities, especially indigenous communities, young people, women, to ensure that the decisions that we are making are addressing these challenges that we continue to face as minority groups, as most affected and vulnerable groups. And to wrap up my, or before I go, I just wanted to say that as decision makers who are going to be here in the next panel, and also for every single person that is here today, that we need to make sure and we need to understand that, yes, we make decisions at COPs, we make decisions in negotiation rooms, but what is most important is we put into practice the policies that we are making. If we continue to sit in negotiation rooms and make beautiful policies, yet these policies are not implemented, then we have a long way to go, and I would say we are failing, or our leaders are actually failing in making sure that they represent and ensure they act for the best interests of their communities. We need to make sure that we continue to remind our leaders that for a healthier and greener planet, we need to make sure we advocate and call out the phase out of fossil fuel. We need to make sure that we are advancing and putting climate justice in the heart of our negotiations. Because I think if we do that, then we are making sure that we are putting in equality, equity, and the respect for basic and fundamental human rights in our negotiations, in our conversations, and the policies that we are making. I would just say that the world is watching, that young people are watching. We know every single thing that is happening. We attend COPs, we sit in the negotiation rooms and observe the conversations that are happening. So it's really important we make sure that COP29 is different from the other COPs. We need to make sure we come out with tangible actions from COP29. We need to make sure we get and have bolder commitments at COP29. We need to make sure we increase the participation of young people in negotiation rooms. We need to make sure we increase the participation of women in negotiation rooms. We need to make sure we have more stronger commitments for a just and equitable society. And most importantly, we need to remind everyone here that the planet is not waiting. The climate is not waiting. There is no time. So the clock is ticking, and we need to act right, and we need to act now. Thank you so much.